Summer in Seattle, and the sign says antiques and vintage because we're at Lander Street Vintage. There have been some changes here. I'm going to show you some of what's going on in the mall, and then I am going to show you what I've done to my spot because I have a lot of fresh stock. It's a good thing because this place has been really busy. Even for summer, their sales have been up quite a bit. They were making a very large sale when I walked in here earlier today. Now, I don't have a lot of large money stuff here, but I have brought in a lot of fun things, and it does seem like they get really good traffic, and a lot of little things are selling as well. Look how cool this is with all the art since 1950. These are original posters from the Seattle World's Fair. The owner of the shop got a nice collection of them. We'll walk by a bunch of pretty barware and show you a few things along the way. This cool Sonneman lamp. Of course, you know, this is a great mall, so it's going to have all sorts of fun things, and we'll linger on a thing or two. That's the least expensive cocktail shaker I've seen in a long time. Somebody should grab that. And behind it, that's a Czech or Bohemian glass piece, but somewhat similar to Chalet. They were definitely influenced by Chalet glass and Rossi glass of Canada. Many moons ago, before he was the owner, I shared this space with Tom Gores, who is the owner of Lander Street Vintage now. And wow, they have really brought in some great designer stuff. Lovely teak piece here. This is Danish. Really like the style of this one back here. And then I wanted to show this because this looks a lot like Dorothy Thorpe. She did do a very similar etching on flat glass pieces. I don't know whether this particular piece is by her or by someone else, but it's definitely Hawaiian of the era. Very similar to a perfume bottle I have in my space that I'll show you. Milo Bauman is a favorite of Laura Caldwell and definitely has always been a favorite of mine too. These are Neo-Deco from the late 70s, early 80s, and that era of design is definitely coming back in. These chairs are very similar to Paul Frankel, and what a great design and what a great designer. We really give him a lot of credit for the movement into bamboo in the late 30s, and these are going to be 1940s vintage. And then there's this. This is a really cool piece. I had one of these in red once. It sold at Vintage Modern in St. Pete, now Janet's Antiques, in about 10 minutes after I brought it in. This one's priced at $9.75. They've gone up a bit. These were made in Canada, and it's based on the J. Martung cantilever armchair. They're very comfortable too. We are seeing some return to traditional in the market, and so you're going to see that reflected in here because this is a major mall. Very pretty Nippon piece, the Wedgwood pottery here. This lovely piece here is probably Rookwood, actually, which is surprising because usually you see pieces like this and you think Owens and Roseville, but everybody copied. Nice Northwood fountain at the Peacock Carnival glass bowl there. That's a great Nippon piece with the card decks on it too. Very pretty piece of Victorian glass. So you're going to see a lot of variety. A neat early signed Rookwood artist piece for $5.95. That seems like a good price. I definitely would see much more on that in Ohio. What things sell for is often a situation of where you have them, whether you're online or in the real world. The Bauer flask, the Franciscan Charger, it took uranium Fiesta Red to get this color, and it went out in 1941 when they stopped allowing the production of it. These pieces here are really neat. These are California modernism. They look a lot like some of Barbara Willis's designs, but these are actually Harold Pemberton, another California designer. The combination of sgraffito work where you have different textures next to the plane, and then this really fun pop of color with a neutral in the case of the one on the left. It's a really cool design. It is as modern now as it was in the late 40s when they first started doing it. White sconces are Pazzola. These were done for Fontana Arte, which did a lot of great lighting in the 1970s and 80s. I understand the ephemera dealer is doing really, really well, so after I get done filming, I'm going to put some more paper ephemera in my space because I sell it well here too. My eye always goes to any sort of mirror glaze, and this one's actually Chinese. Reminds me of the Zolnay Eosin ware from around 1900, but the Chinese, of course, perfected a lot of techniques in ceramics long before we do. There's a really cool Juneware piece, speaking of which, with purple splash. And this one's really neat because it's a tripod, and what a great shape. They are saying Steuben or Cazal. I think that shape is Cazal, if I remember right. They're usually marked, but not always. Beautiful Orine glass, and this is very similar to Tiffany's Favril, all from the early 1900s. And then this is really cool because this is a Lalique piece in a color, and I don't associate Lalique with color in the earlier days so much, so that's unusual. They do well with garden here too, though, and here's something that could almost be considered primitive. It's handmade. It's painted and repainted several times originally, and then they just cleaned it up and brought it in the way it was. That's pretty cool. I would say from the design 1930s or 40s, something someone made at home. Priced at $275 now. Some pretty great vintage fashion in some of these spaces. In fact, this space in general just has a look to it. Remember hippie bead separating rooms? Love that look. Although as a kid, I remember getting bashed in the face with it quite a few times. But this is the room that has really changed. I'm going to be doing another appraisal fair here sometime in October to be announced, so look in the community tab. But when I was here, there were walls, there were piles of stuff. Well, they have this all pretty much worked out now, and it has turned from stacks and piles of furnishings into vignettes and an entirely separate area for garden-related items, which we should take a look at right now because this is a really fun room. I've always loved the original butterfly chairs. The original butterfly chairs did have a 4-part seat in vinyl or leather, and they had a single piece. It did not fold up like the ones that they reissued in the 1990s. The original is priced at $675. That's why they reissued them. Very cool Bauer swirl pot in a nice stand. But here we get into some real hardcore garden wear and garden art and some really cool things. These angel wings that were some sort of a store display. There's a couple on hold at $12.50 each. Look at this amazing Chinese design door. At least that's what this puts me in mind of, although it's got some European aspects too, and it's very, very, very tall, which means this would have been out of some sort of a building, probably built in the 1700s or possibly earlier. Lots of really lovely concrete, and another beautiful angel. And if you're up a creek without one, well, there's your paddles. We're going to come back in here and show you some pretty cool stuff. These columns are pretty awesome, actually. Decayed, yes. Both modern and archaeological at the same time, yes. Just really fun. And then in the back is a real cedar canoe from here in the Northwest. That is a very old piece. You can see it bleached out. It had some problems and they beached it at some point. We don't see a whole lot of those. That is really something. It's big. It'd be a great thing up in, like, say, a bar or somebody with a really big house near the ocean. Or you could even put it down lower and make a giant ice bucket out of it and serve buffets in it. Love these saucer-shaped chairs. These are Salterini, $1,800 for the set of the 4, and yes, they need powder coating, but it's hard enough to find these now in this condition where they're solid and worth redoing that it's worth spending the money. Who would have thought that these web pieces from Jordan Brown would be a thing now, but you know, it's been 40 years and that's certainly long enough for a lot of this to have gone in disrepair, so finding them in good shape, that's the trick. Woodard, another good designer, and he used a lot of big round pad feet at various points later on. His designs are pretty distinctive. You can find old Salterini catalogs too. Look at that amazing concrete gazebo. That's so cool. And I love the way the moss has grown on the Kuan Yin. That's just beautiful. And she's being shrouded by an old hood from a 1930s era car. Isn't that something? Hood ornament and all. Tell me what you see in the comments. This will be your Rorschach test for the day. There's a little bit of old advertising and some license plates and things. It's getting hard enough to find this stuff that it's really disappearing, but it's popular here. So is that. These were fun in the 1970s when they were inspired by Peter Max. A nice afternoon light coming through that pink Italian glass lamp there. This seems to be a nice area for lamps in general. And then there's a bunch of leather furniture here and a huge collection of Franciscan Starburst. This came out in 1955. They made it for about 10 years. If they started making it again, it would sell in spades because the collectors are crazy for this, and these prices you're seeing are not unrealistic. Take a look at eBay and factor in shipping and the fact that you're not getting to see it in person to check the condition. It's such a great pattern. I met a woman and her husband who collected this in Centralia, at Antique Fest, which I'm getting ready for now. And she had this pattern tattooed around her arm. She loved it so much. Jeannie! These were the first Jeannie bottles when they were trying to figure out how to design her house. Someone went to the liquor store, saw this, and said, hey, we can modify that. The later ones had the handles attached. Cute little airplane pedal car. But when we get back in here, you'll see a lot of interesting stuff. In fact, they've just had a big sale, so there's a big empty hole here now. That's a pretty neat bar with the gesso work. That would look good with your Florentine accessories. Collection Reeve has this section now, and it's a really interesting way of displaying. I like the mixture of furniture with industrial items. They're showing a lot of marble. I really do believe marble is starting to come back. I have certainly sold a lot of the marble fruit like this where I've been selling. They also have some neat shell bowls from, I believe those are actually from Africa rather than Southeast Asia. Love these wall units. I haven't owned one in a long time. They're a lot to put up. You've got to put furring up or make sure your walls are good for it when you're displaying in a store, but it's a fantastic way to get a lot of space, a lot of storage space in a small space. The Danes were really, really, really genius about how they figured out how to use space and make a big statement in a small area. This looks refreshing in here, so let's take a look. I like a lot of this Mexican ceramic that you're seeing in here. Various pieces, Tlaquepaque area. I'm sure that there are good books and more scholarship on this. I'd really like to learn more. I have some friends who are interested in this who I should sit down and interview sometime. This is a place where you can pile it if you do it in a way where you can still see the furniture, and the furniture stacks on furniture. I mean, it's just a way to maximize your space. The spaces are not inexpensive here. This is not a cheap piece of real estate. We are 2 blocks from the Starbucks World Headquarters in Seattle. There are very few antique malls left in Seattle because the real estate is very expensive. So this is a real treat to have here. I've always been a fan of these 1920s. They're saying mid-century, but these are actually a little older. These are Moroccan style from the 1920s when designs from that part of Africa and Asia became very popular. And I always thought these were really neat. They have lots of legs, so you could put one object in the middle underneath if you wanted to show at home, and then you have a nice tabletop. I like the botanicals with the shells. These look to be rather old too. You can tell by the engraving style. I would say that these probably date back 200 years easily. The classic Hollywood Regency 3-piece bronze nesting table, another real space saver. I love nesting tables. You can display on them, and look at all the extra room. I have a set in my space, actually. All right, we're walking back here, and it's summer, so we have someone in their swim trunks. This space looks really cool, and it's an interesting mixture. Again, we've got this piece that looks like it's probably Chinese. A lot of this came in about 35 years ago here in the Northwest when China was really starting to modernize. They actually let go of a lot of this kind of furniture, and it's just beautiful, and it shows the paint and patina of much age. I also really like the assayer's scale here. When the Seattle Gold Rush came in the 1890s, well, they weighed a lot of gold on things that looked a lot like this. Big old pile of lamps here too, and I love the colored acrylic furniture from Italy. Now, condition does matter, and these look a little scratched. You can get them buffed out, and some of the designers that worked for Cartel, it would be worth paying to have that done. And you will see true antiques next to mid-century pieces. So this is Boda. This is one of the Valienne vases. And if it says just Boda, then this is going to be right before 1971 when they merged, and it does just say Boda. Valienne did a lot of their designs well into the 1990s. But this piece, this pink clam broth, as they call it, because look how it's just a little thin on the color. It goes to kind of a white, like clam broth, but this one has a pink cast. And this is a Victorian piece from around 1870. Another space back here that is a lot of vintage fashion, including jeans galore, as well as some cool mid-century furniture. Back there, there's another wall unit. That's a really nice big one. They're doing some work in here because they had a big sale today and a lot of things came out of here, but this is where a lot of the Tom Gorse collection is housed currently. This is a really interesting artist, Herman Martin, and he's gotten a big collection all together. I like the colors, I like the abstraction, I like that it's vibrant and alive. His figures are as well. It might be strange for some tastes, of course, but modernism can be that way. But that's part of what's fun, is that it challenges you and it takes you out of the ordinary. Herman Martin died in 1996, but he was a California artist who started in the New York school and then moved west after having worked as an engraver for Tiffany and Van Cleef and Arpels. Once he was established in Beverly Hills, his paintings became the stuff of wealthy people in that part of the world, and he became known as an artist, and these are his legacy. My friend Tom, who owns them all, loves these Laverne tables. They were made in Chicago. I believe it was a father and son, and they're just amazing. They're brass. They're heavy as can be. I found one for him in Florida. We found a good enough price on it that I actually paid to ship it out here to him. This one is actually signed, which is unusual. There are a lot of Asian motifs, but not exclusively so in the Laverne tables. Lo Bauman, of course, worked a long time before those brass tables we saw earlier, and here are a pair that were definitely inspired by Danish modern. He made these for Thayer Kogan back in the 60s. This is a wonderful piece too. Arnie Vetter, a very good design. I love the way that they would hang in cantilever pieces on these, and yet they were still very strong. Just such intelligent designs. And this is a sliding drawer that goes left to right. This is so cool. So depending which way you want it, it'd be better with two hands, but you can see it will move. There we go. This is a really cool alabaster abstract sculpture, and I love the way that they put it right next to a 19th century apothecary set of drawers with the old foundry A.W. and Company mark on the handles. I say apothecary, but this might have been used for card files of some sort in an office as well. This is a big console table that sits low, but wouldn't it be fun to do a lot of really colorful glass on this? A lot of people in the Northwest like browns and neutral tones, and boho, which is really cool too. But of course I like lots of color, and I would love to use a marble veined mirrored table to reflect a lot of color back. These are antique, and they're real cast iron pedestal urns. We see a lot of black painted ones that were made 30 years ago or less, and those are nice too and sell for $400 or $500 a piece. These are $3,200 for the pair because they have the pedestals and they are real and original. And look at this very pretty rosewood desk. We don't really see a lot of rosewood anymore. This is a Broyhill Brasilia table. I love this pattern with the hairpin curves. And yes, they were patterning off of some of the architecture in Brazil when they built the capital of Brasilia in 1962. I just sold my Jaru llama at the Rose City Vintage Market in Portland, and here are two orange ones, a pair and even larger than what I had. So that's really fun to see a different version. I believe this is Elmwood. It's a very, very pretty carved Chinese screen. And some Asian furniture in general, I really do like anything with drawers, and Asian apothecary chests are pretty great too. Underneath is my favorite color of desk from this period. Just that mint green is so great. I remember when you couldn't give these away because they're so heavy to move, but this came out of Boeing. This would have been where engineers designed things that went into space back when they were doing such things. I guess they have a new CEO, so hopefully things will get better at Boeing. This is Arthur Umanoff. I've had bar stools of his for sale before. I sold them in Florida. He's known and sells here as well. I really like this with the wine caddy. And this one has some shelves for display as well. It's priced at $16.50. And these are the suitcases. They want $250 each. That is about what these go for. Jocelyn from Crazy Lamp Lady and Kate from Follow That Bug Vintage and I watched a set sell for $850 when we were in Ohio at a mall. Love the majestic zigzag lamp almost as much as I love the gazelle table. That is just a fantastic design. These are very seldom seen because people don't really give them up because they're just so amazing. This is not the original Die Scherve, but it certainly shares the inspiration, and it's just amazing. Folk Olsen, this reminds me a lot of Adrian Pearsall again. Whenever I see those angular lines, I assume Pearsall, but there were other designers who did it too. And then the chaise lounge up here is a Charles Evans design. Tell me your problems. And I have a shepherd in the family, so I have to show this massive sheep's wool rug that probably spent most of its life on the wall, which is why it's in such good shape. Over in the corner, my favorite artist from Spokane, one of my favorite artists, period, Balazs. He did this as an installation in someone's home. A lot of dealers in working their spaces today. This is going to be really fun. I see a very cool Chinese mask over on the wall there. So let's go see my space, because I put a lot of work into it. I didn't really take out much. I took out one box and I added because they've sold a lot. They have stayed busy even in the summer, which is not the busy time in the designer wall typically. And while I'm walking on to the next spot, why don't you take this time to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because then you can click the bell to be notified of future videos. Also, if you'd like to support the channel with memberships, there's information about that below the dashed line in the description of any video. Anything that tells YouTube that you're interested in what we're doing is very helpful to the channel, and we're very grateful for all of your support. These folks have been dealers in Seattle for a long time, and they were one of the first to really catch on to mid-century modern, and they just get really cool stuff. And I wanted to show these because these are pottery craft, and I don't know that I have these in my book. I actually think that I hadn't found these when I put the book out, so those are fun to look for out of the 70s. Yeah, there's a set of 3 exactly, and there's a baby one. And this is really fun. It may need a new stopper, but that is a really cool bank. Baldelli, Italy. I have not seen that piece before. They just have a lot of really fun pieces. I really enjoy Higgins glass. They have a couple of pieces of that. And Pacific Stoneware, which was made in Portland and definitely has Northwest collectors and really should start being collected by people outside the area because it is beautiful. Look at the colors in that. Very good quality too. This is part of their People Lovers line, the cookie jar. Some really fun things here, and the prices are good on these. I really like the Howard Miller clock. I know that's a newer one, but it's got a real 80s deco design, and $60, my goodness. And this is a really fun, cartel from Italy. That makes sense. They made that furniture that I showed you earlier, and they made this lamp, and I just love the color. The famous Danish designer Pete Hein apparently did a version of Mancala, which is a game I really enjoy. Very simple game that originated in Africa, where you move stones, or in this case, little glass rocks around. Another fun game. People really like these old board games just for the graphics, especially the adult versions from the 70s. They're having their cocktails, and he's smoking, and that's just the way things were then. Nice set of apothecary bottles. I remember when these just were out of sight and you could hardly find them. Now I think most of them are in collections because I just don't see them very often. I haven't seen a big collection since my friend Betty and I were in Mexico City. All right, we're going to pass by the records and more vintage fashion. You see a lot of stuff packed into this store, and it's because they get a lot of traffic and they are selling really well. Last year they were voted the best antique store in the Puget Sound area, and it doesn't surprise me at all. This time I really added a lot and didn't take a lot out. I'm sure at some point I'll need to do a big switcheroo, but the most interesting and expensive piece I put in actually came from a friend of mine in Kentucky, and it is a Coach leather horse blanket. She used to work for Churchill Downs. This is the Y2K edition. One of the staff members here recognized the fabric immediately, which was great because we felt it was authentic, but for them to tell us right out, that was really cool. Also one of those very scarce SNCC posters from the Civil Rights era, an original one, that's why it's priced at $7.50. But I also wanted to bring in a lot of fun kitsch. Some of this is new to me. The toothbrush holders are fairly recent. The salt and pepper shakers, I just got a huge collection. The Bologna Star Pigs I've had at a few shows, but they haven't been here, and I think they're going to be a hit. Sasha Brostoff and Matthew Adams pieces here for the Alaska crowd, although we get a lot of Alaskans in the winter too. And then we've got Banks and a caddy I've never seen before with a cable car. Thought that was fun. We redid this shelf a little bit to make it kind of a sweet group of quarters running about. And then here's our happy pastels. And two camo. They said, yes, they were intended to have the opposite colored shakers. These are from the 1950s, appropriately seated in front of the Eastern's Prayer from the 1920s. I sold an Afghan while I was here and immediately went to the car and put this one in its place. I just love the dark color with the bright pop against it. The 80s ladies shoe phone had to come out. Once I put the horse blanket up there, because it was really the only place it could go, then I realized that I was just going to commit to the orange and red on the front and add even more. So I put in these cool starburst glasses, the giraffes in front of a Tom DeBerrio. Tom DeBerrio is the dealer in the small. He's a friend of mine and a known Seattle artist, and that's one of his pieces. Some fun 70s stuff, some good Murano glass, the Florentine trays, and a Shushan box. But I did put one big pop of green here because that was the best place to put the lamp. I just love the lamp. I think it's time for someone else to love it too, and now that it's at eye level, I think they'll see it better. It was on a low table where you didn't really grasp it. The shade is the cool part. We have to stretch ourselves sometimes. I like a lot of color. I realize that that's not always the style that everybody likes, and it was suggested to me that I try to do a neutral area, and so here's a neutral display. And I actually am pretty happy with how it came out. Neutrals can be rich too because you have lots of golds. I put in the Jere ship. I also have this wonderful wall hanging piece. And I can do the neutrals because behind me a dealer has a really fun and funky booth with a lot of radios and other things, and he's got colored lights. So that actually is nice contrast in the background. I decided to do sort of a boudoir display on this table. I put the pair of tables in here to add space. And I also put in this wonderful Victorian French mirror because I thought she looked good with the wonderful Art Nouveau French bust that would have come maybe 20 years later. So you have something from the late 1800s and something from the early 1900s. And you can do this when you're mixing in this kind of a ball, and it's really fun. On the other hand, I also put my telephones together, put a really fun radio in there, a bunch of silver glasses with an interesting pattern that you see more in the Midwest than here, so I was glad to bring them. And this Victorian gutta percha piece, which has a really interesting feature actually. This has an old staple type repair. In fact, that's right where I put the little tag, is where that little tab is. And rather than staples, they used nails, but that was how you repaired things back then. This is an 1860s or 70s piece, and that repair is old too. So somebody broke it a long time ago, had it fixed, and thought enough to keep it all these years. And now there's people who collect for those interesting repairs. Plus, I thought it was just a pretty piece. This is a little less pretty, but it is Anthony Perkins in Psycho with his signature, so that's pretty cool. The chrome tables are reunited here in the Northwest. And I decided a lot of blue. I decided to let the colors in the Marc Chagall print carry me into this. And I think especially I'm fond of this vase. This is Ton Coleman, who was a Seattle artist. It's a stoneware piece. What a beautiful glaze. These are fun too. This is Tim Foss. He retired and moved to Minnesota. He's no longer a ceramicist, but he was quite a darling of the Seattle ceramics studio art pottery community for a while in the 1990s. This is Hager with Ballerina. I packed this into new fresh books, a bunch of things that are signed actually, including Treasure Craft Pottery and Pottery Craft Stoneware. If you haven't gotten your book, you can order directly from me, or you can come to my mall spaces and pick them up. Portuguese roosters I thought looked good in here. It needed some color and brightness and to mix it up. But I did put in more paper ephemera, a whole bunch of these 1970s birthday cards, never been used, for only $10. Seattle Pilots. Gracie Hansen, she organized some of the adult entertainment at the Seattle World's Fair. A bunch of Seattle postcards too. This is a fantastic place. The old Curiosity Shop, it's still there. They don't get giant totem poles so much anymore, but they get a ton of really cool stuff, and they have a bunch of neat old stuff in the shop. I'll have to show you sometime when I come back here to Seattle and vicinity. I still have some Spanish architecture ornament drawings. These are from the Georgian Room, which is a famous place to have a cocktail or food at the Olympic Club Hotel, which was Seattle's finest for many years and is still a major, important, nice hotel here. This is from the 1915 World's Fair. I brought in a bunch of political stuff because, well, it is a political year, along with Sports Illustrated, The Story of the Man in Space and Other Worlds Fair item here. Some local circus stuff, Dayglow bumper stickers. I added to the Boeing paper. I still have this really cool Boeing flight manual. If you want to go fly an old Boeing 720, this will tell you exactly how to do it. It was issued to Eastern Airlines, as were these glasses. I know there's someone out there who asked me for a set of these glasses, and I put 4 aside for you. If you can contact me, I can't find your email for some reason. I'm sorry about that. Pullman is the home of the other big university in Washington. I like this store display for the soap. These glasses are really fun. In Florida, the Tampa Bay Rowdies, their first year in 1975, fans started wearing these giant glasses and it caught on. It's still a thing. Some people who've gone for many years still will do that, including me. A placard from a movie, and then I moved some more childhood stuff in and added to this. So I think it's a fun space all the way around. Signage sells well here, and they don't have a whole lot, so I brought in my displays, the Winston-Salem cigarette display, the Grain Belt beer sign, the light beer neon sign. Neon is really just not being produced anymore. So this is where you get it, is in vintage stores. Kept the cocktail going on this table, but I put the Blanco handcraft piece in, not just because it's a great piece with the old foil label and the Pride Rondelles, but because you can see the light beer sign through it. Big jar of marbles for $100. I put one of the Wolford lamps in here. I really should have put the big ones in too, but I think I put them aside. We just did a video from Cle Elum and Roslyn, Washington, so if you haven't seen that, go check it out in the playlist. We went to the town where Northern Exposure was filmed, where Barry Corwin played this guy, and these are pieces from the original set. This is fun. I may have shown this before, but I just get such a kick out of it. This guy in the early 70s, I think is a joke, in the 1972 election, ran as a Republican in the 7th District. I don't think he won, but they did send a tiny message. Tiny Freeman, he was a local fixture for a long time here. This is a neat batik. I put in some more glass, some more empoli. I decided to shake up the color story a little bit and go with some blues and greens. Also put in a lot of fun kitsch over here. Not just poodles and kitty cats, but a whole bunch of salt and pepper shakers as well. A little bit of Asian, including the very interesting Japanese print from about 1930 showing various industry in Japan at the time. I like the genie TV lamp. Hello, everybody. Got the Italian whale that I bought with Daniel Clace. I miss him. He was a great part of our community, and he wrapped that up for me, and I'm really glad I got to meet him, and I'm glad that that got to come out here. This is Victoria Tower in England. I just think that's a very pretty piece of stained glass, and I like color, and it does look colorful there. Weller Lord Beak candlesticks. And then next to my psychedelic op art posters from the 60s and 70s, here's this really interesting copper design piece from later in the 70s. This is where I get into the neutral section. Again, I added more than I took out. So we added the face mask, and we added some John Perry, and we added the 50s cat, and then worked with some of the pieces we already had to put them out where they would be a little easier for people to see. And I think the result is pleasing. I'm so used to mixing up a lot of color that this was something new for me, but there are some really pretty pieces in here, and people here seem to get this kind of decor. I guess I need to be hit over the head with color, but a lot of people here, they like the subtlety. They'll go boho, and they'll mix something like Art Deco geese in with a fun 80s mirror, or some interesting Chinese basket with the original paper in it. This is cute. This is where you would put your slippers. I just got this when I was at the antique show in Rose City Vintage in Portland. The geodesic dome is a Jere piece, again, from California. And I'm going to show you what's going on beyond me here too, because this area has also changed. There's just a few new dealers, but there are dealers back here now. So I'm not the last one in the mall anymore. The end of the mall is actually one space behind me. That's interesting, the Asian cigarette advertisement. Keen and Grande. Love the old chocolate milk, buttermilk sign. I think I could rock that coat. And then there's this space behind me, and this is where the color is. And this space is really fun. I love the way they've got the attendant, now we would call properly, but stewardess back in the day, dressed. This space is called Circa Seattle, and it is really fun. Lots of color, lots of interest, a really interesting combination of art pieces, a little bit of kitchenware. I like the way they use color because they use it as a pop, because they like to sell a lot of things like televisions and radios that are fairly neutral colors typically. I do like these stone tables too. We used to see more of these in the Seattle area. Another thing that's very heavy because that's a big piece of plastic lucite with a bunch of rocks in it. But it's a cool look from the 60s. It was popular here for a while. And then the record dealer does very well back here and has really added to their stuff and has really started to draw a regular crowd, which is great because my space is right there. So I feel like I'm in a good part of the mall. But there really are no bad parts. And if you want to see the rest of the parts, well, you're just going to have to get here to Seattle. There's a lot of really good antique and vintage in the Northwest, and the summertime weather is just great, and there's still time, so we'll hope to see you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help, and we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.